wholesaling would be so much easier if people could get isolated data, truly isolated data, and you knew that no one else had ever made this offer to that homeowner, and you were going to, blow their mind with something brand new.
Right.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
That would be amazing.
Right. But
It's not the world we're living in.
Right. So you have to keep the entire system in mind, especially in a market like this. Like it's so crowded. There's so many people doing it. Like the odds of you being first, like slim to none.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Real Estate Disruptors. Today we've got Michael Bartolomei with Launch Control. And Michael flew in from Puerto Escondido, Mexico to talk about how to crush text marketing and not get shut down in 2023. Kind of a big deal at this exact moment in time. I'm on a mission to create 100 millionaires. The information on the show alone is enough to help you become a millionaire. In the next 5 to 7 years, if you take consistent action, you will become one. We also know one of the fastest ways to become a millionaire is to get really good at sales. So you can join us and over 100 members inside our sales community at salesdisruptors.com. And we're also hiring right now. So if you're interested in working with us, go to disruptorsjobs.com. And this show is brought to you by our sister company, InvestorLift. Get access to millions of cash buyers across the country. Go to investorlift.com, put in Disruptors to get 10% off. And guys, if you get value out of the show, please hit that subscribe button. That way we can all grow together. Please do not keep us a secret. All right. So you ready to get into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I guess the first question is, how did you get involved in texting?
So I met the founder of the company, Launch Control, and there was a need because one of the hardest things for people to do with SMS engagement is craft the messaging, right? Like, what do you say?
Right.
And so my first kind of duty really was to connect with real estate investors and to help them craft what they wanted to say. But there was a bit of a secondary agenda to that because what makes Launch special is that it's not just a piece of software. It's really rooted in real estate investment and overcoming the challenges of real estate investment.
Yeah.
So we knew that to craft any sort of engagement for real estate investment, it had to come from a place of understanding the challenges of real estate investors.
And I know you had to go interview all the other investors, but Aaron, who started it, was already in the space.
Yeah, exactly. So, he was trying to overcome the same challenges as everyone else and to find good quality leads to get to the point of discovery call with homeowners and to close, a lot of deals. He wanted to be in the upper echelon and that requires, the ability to have a lot of discovery calls and to close a high percentage of those. So he, rather than going to existing pieces of software to try to solve that issue for SMS engagement, he decided to build a better software. One that was really intent on problem solving for real estate investors and focused on their needs. And that's what Launch Control came out of.
When did you start working with him?
Probably 6 months after the launch of Launch Control, like right from the beginning. And I didn't realize that at first. And then, a few months in after talking to him, I realized how soon in the process I was getting involved. But basically right from the beginning.
And when did they start?
About 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
So about 3.5 years ago for you. When exactly, if you don't mind me asking?
It was in 2019. Yeah, like mid-2019.
And I'm asking because this was a time, there were a bunch of other people texting already, right? I think at that time we were using Text Magic, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of different platforms out there at the time, but it seemed like delivery rate was not an issue. It didn't matter which platform you're using, they all worked.
Yeah.
Right? It seemed so at the time. And it wasn't until, I want to say, late 2019 or mid 2020 where we had to do this whole tokenization thing, where we had to change and mix it up. And we were using a Slingshot, which was a white label of some other platform. But yeah, we had to use all this tokenization. It got really fancy and it became more and more work.
Right.
To get the text messages delivered.
Yeah.
So what was your experience? Like, do you see, like, is this a situation where it just kept getting more and more challenging?
No, I don't see it as more and more challenging. I just see it as getting closer and closer to the end result, the wanted end result,
Right.
which is like when you send a text message to someone, when you send a text message from any platform that you're using, launch or otherwise, you're looking at a dashboard.
Yeah.
Right? It's easy to forget that from the recipient standpoint, that's a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah.
Every time you get a response in launch control, there is someone holding their phone and looking at the message that you just sent. And if you lose that visual sometimes when you're trying to do this in a way where you're trying to juggle 25 inbound conversations at any one time.
Right.
But the truth is that is a single individual, right? And the carriers, and this is the carriers that this is a reaction to, they want to maintain within their traffic channels for their recipients wanted conversations, one-on-one conversations. Anything that strikes as spam, anything that strikes as repetitive, one message sent to many, that was always going to get filtered out because it's not respectful of the recipient.
Well, I like the way you said like this is a one-on-one because they actually reply back on the phone.
Right.
Because one of the things we talk about in our sales training is that because we're trying to buy 10 houses, 20 houses a month, it's really easy to forget that we're dealing with a human being, right? Like, yeah, we might try to run 2 appointments a day, but they might run 2 or 3 appointments right now. But prior to right now, they might have not talked to a person to buy their house 10, 15, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And so you're dealing with a person who's going through a life-altering experience. Because that's what happens for them to reach out to us. Like a life event occurred. And we kind of forget that. And so the example I use in our training is we sometimes can be guilty of kind of like those EMTs you see where like every once in a long while you see an EMT and they're kind of laughing, right?
Yeah.
While they're with a person that's going through a bad situation. That person is literally having the worst day of their life.
Right.
The worst. But for an EMT who sees this every single day, they get desensitized to this.
Right.
They forget what someone's going through.
Yeah, I agree completely. There's such a level of vulnerability in these people's lives at the point that the people are reaching out to them.
Right.
And there is the unknown factor when it comes to direct sell options. So they're already in a position where they feel like they're vulnerable, and then they're getting these conversations coming at them that they don't have the research behind it. They don't have the knowledge to know that this is a legitimate conversation that they could be having. And so it creates a sense of distrust throughout the entire industry. So I think people also forget the necessity to overcome that distrust by trying to truly connect with that person on a one-on-one level.
So we talked about how to, on the title for today's show is like how to, overcome or prevent some of the sales challenges or some of the challenges you're going to have with texting.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, actually, let's just really, really quick on a high level.
Yeah.
What is text marketing? And then what do we say to people that frown upon it?
Okay.
So let's start. What is text marketing?
Well, let's start with what text marketing should be.
Okay.
Not what it is. And I'm speaking specifically to the real estate investment industry, not text marketing or engagement as a whole.
Right.
So what text engagement should be is a multi-touch point system that comes in at each cycle of the sales funnel. Right. So if you think about it, if you are able to initiate a conversation via text, you're not going to close the deal via text. At some point, you're going to push that to a call. That call is most likely going to equal a site visit. But in between, how many touch points do you usually have with that client? It can't all be a phone call. Email isn't going to be effective. The most effective way to deliver a small piece of information, poignant, and you know that it's going to be read in the moment, even if you're not expecting a response, text.
Right.
Right. And it gets underutilized. When you've completed a deal with the homeowner and you want to just send a thank you message, you want to communicate with them afterwards, text would work really well. Right? When you want to communicate with your buyers and let them know what you have available, text is going to be the least invasive, fastest way to get them to respond. There are all these ways to use SMS engagement throughout the full cycle of closing a real estate deal that go underutilized because too many people pigeonhole it as outbound, right? And so where where I'd like to see the industry shift is in that level of growing up and sophistication of really utilizing SMS the way it should be utilized, and to really take the full impact of what it can do for your business.
So you're kind of talking about like etiquette, right? Like
Yes.
there's kind of funny. Like I'm seeing my kids go through this. They're in 6th and 7th grade, and they get like email writing, right? Like, here's how you send a formal email. Here's how you send an informal email. So we're talking about like adding these etiquette behind the messaging on for texting.
Yeah, and I think that the ways to approach things are really in front of people more than they realize, right? Because when we say that people are in a position of vulnerability or have gone through a life-changing event, right? There are still levels to that.
Yeah.
Right? If you're approaching somebody that is over 55 and in a high equity situation versus somebody that you know is going into pre-foreclosure, different timelines, different problems, different approaches, right? And knowing by really looking and analyzing and shrinking down the data that you're focusing on and humanizing that data, it gets easier. Like I see mistakes like this that will happen, right? Like using that over 55 high equity situation. Somebody says in a first message, no, I'm not interested in selling my home, or not right now, right? Not a hard opt out. It's a timing issue. Not interested right now, right? So you got to figure someone over 55, high equity situation, they're not in a huge rush. They don't have a ticking clock, but if they got onto your list through filtering, this is probably a conversation that they should be having, right? If not wholesale, then at least subject to, right? And so rather than coming up with solutions and different angles to show them the viability of this route as compared to, the traditional MLS route, people would just put them on a drip campaign, and that drip campaign will ping them once a month saying, hey, do you want cash for your house? How about cash for your house now? How about cash? Like that. There's no strategy behind that. It's just a set it and forget it mentality, and hoping that again, like the desperation slips through. Right. But how many deals are there that aren't the last resort deals that aren't being closed?
Yeah.
Because there's not strategy focused on what that person needs. Like what is their emotional motivation behind wanting to sell that house? You can dig pretty deep on that without having a discovery call. Yeah. By just the data that's right on your spreadsheet. There's a lot you can mine from that.
So how would you respond to that, right? The guy's like, not right now. How would you respond to that with an SMS?
For that one, I would respond right away and say, okay, I understand, no problem. Thank you for letting me know. And I wouldn't contact them for a minimum of 60 days. And one of the things that I really want people to understand when it comes to marketing, and I'd love your feedback on this, right? Is I feel like in real estate investment, there's a real versus mentality, and it's, well, I'm getting more ROI off of SMS than I am off of direct mail, than I am off of PPC, so I'm going to cancel this and cancel that. Or I heard through someone that a lot of people are generating leads on Facebook. I'm going to drop everything. I'm going to focus on that. And there's this real versus mentality where I think the truth is everyone should have, at the level that they can afford, a multi-funnel marketing system that utilizes everything. So I'll give you an example, right? If you have some direct mail leads coming in, great leads, right? They raised their hand. They came to you. You're not going to close all of them. No chance, right? So what do you do with the leads that you didn't close? Do you say, oh, well, didn't work on the call or two? Or do you take those names, put them into launch control, retarget them, get them to respond, get them re-engaged, use the automations in a positive way. And when it's time to get back on the phone with them, get back on the phone with them. And one of the things that I think is overlooked in real estate investment, or that I see as kind of a gap, is that I think that everything is a matter of timing. Right?
Oh, it's very much a matter of timing.
So if you weren't able to sell someone on the first go round, right, because it was a matter of timing, then it's a question of when are they going to be ready, right? But here's what I think happens in the middle, right? I think because direct sell options are so unknown. There's almost a research period in between. People go, okay, I had that conversation. I'm not sure that I trust that route.
Yeah.
Let me dig a little bit. Let me see if this is relevant, right? But the odds of them going back to you, the originator, who actually teed that up for them and taught them and gave them a little bit of focus on an alternative, it's pretty slim if it's 90 days later or 6 months later. They're going to go to the person who approaches them with a similar offer in the time frame that they're ready to sell.
Right,
and that person's going to be like, wow, that one was easy. And it's because you did it for them.
Right. You did all the
all
the heavy lifting, and then it's like the whole thing, like open the jar.
Yeah.
Something you mentioned about it shouldn't be just one or the other. It should be multiple.
Yes.
So Jason Lewis is someone that, is a friend of mine, someone I look up to. He's the founder of Investor Machine. We had a call. Like, he is having like a record quarter. He's just blowing the doors out. And he's like, Steve, of all the deals I've got going on, you wouldn't believe how many different lead sources they're all closing from. Like, I don't know, 6, 7, like 13.
Yeah.
Like, he just has, fishing lines, all these fishing lines in the water, right? And whichever one goes.
Yeah.
But he's just steady Eddie, and one of them's going to pop, the other's going to pop, and his team is ready for whichever one is ready to go.
Yeah, and where I don't know his system, and I don't know what he's doing exactly, but I would imagine that as much as he's killing it, that there's still an opportunity to improve, because there are ways to plug those different routes together, right? If you can plug the leads you didn't close from direct mail into SMS, if you can plug the leads that you didn't close from PPC into SMS, if you can take the leads that didn't engage with SMS and route those through a direct mail campaign, or if you've got leads coming into your website and you're doing cheap retargeting through social, there are so many ways that you can take these channels and plug them together to augment them.
Make it omnipresence.
Yes.
Even Stephanie Betters, right, with LeftMe, she says, like, one of her best ROIs is just direct mail to people that raise their hands, and she just mails them.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm going to give a quick plug, because you just brought her up. We just completed a integration with LeftMe for launch control. So anybody that's working with them and wants to have that Salesforce kind of background of what they offer, we've got that set up now.
Oh yeah, I am extremely excited about that, because we actually have some challenges with launch control, and those challenges is working better than I expected.
Yeah.
And so, like, people are just picking up the phone and calling us.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I do want to sell.
Yeah.
Or like, we don't know how at this exact moment. Like, when they just call us back, we don't have a system right now. So I'm so looking forward to this integration getting fully integrated in our LeftMe.
Yeah.
So that we can see that.
Yeah, I'm happy about it too, because I know a lot of people that we work with that are running the bigger shops are either using LeftMe, which is great, love that, or they're on the struggle bus trying to figure out Salesforce themselves, which could be tough. So I feel like this is a great hybrid option if you want to use launch and you want to have that Salesforce infrastructure.
Yeah.
Just the LeftMe and launch combo is a great one.
Yeah, I was really excited when I saw Stephanie make that announcement, I think last week.
Yeah.
So we're talking about how to crush text marketing in 2023.
Yeah.
And not get in trouble. And I was remarking with you before the show, when you and I planned the show, maybe you already knew it, but I didn't. I was like, this is like the perfect time to do this show. Like, people are freaking out right now on Facebook. They're saying this, is it A2P, 10 DLC, right? Whatever, is going to kill everything. So are we dead in the water?
No. This is what it comes down to, honestly, is just fear based off of a lack of information. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Right. So to clear things up, there are two things that people need to keep in mind, or a real clear distinction.
Yeah.
Right? So there is the TCPA, which is federal regulations, right? And then there are many state versions of this, right? But these are very big macro telecom industry things. These are not the things that we need to worry about. Like the use case has been proven. You can text under TCPA guidelines. Launch control as a piece of software is 100% compliant because it is not an auto dialer. Like the fact that you have to hit send on each of your messages, you can edit them. The fact that you're taking manual actions within the system, that you're sending a different and unique message to every recipient because of the text spinners within the app, all of that it keeps messages compliant on that federal legal level. All of the perceived disruption recently is actually coming from a 2019 document. It's called the CTIA, which is a set of carrier best practices. They basically got together and put together their best practices of the kind of engagement that they expect through SMS. So all of this, 10DLC, which for anybody who doesn't know, that rather scary regulatory name is just a way of describing a regular phone number. 10-digit long code, an area code, and 7 digits. That's the 10, right? So it just means that you're using a regular phone number to text a regular phone number. It's not coming from a 1-800 number. It's not coming from a short code. So this is, a lot of people I feel like put 10DLC into the TCPA box. It doesn't belong in that box. It's not a TCPA thing. It is a carrier best practices related registration process. Okay, so in any company that is registering through launch control, and I want to make clear, we don't register. We don't register things. We just expedite the registration.
You're facilitating.
We're facilitating. That's it. They're making it easy so that people don't have to do it themselves because it's cumbersome, right? So what investors are doing when they're giving their EIN number and their company information and they're having their website reviewed to make sure that they have opt-in data, what they're doing is establishing through an administrative body called the TCR. And the TCR allows you to register once to text with each of the major carriers. So you're not doing multiple registrations with each of them.
Verizon.
Right. Imagine the headache if you had to register with like 7 different carriers. It'd be a pain. So they have this administrative body, the TCR, which allows you to single register with all of them. And by doing that, you're establishing a B2B relationship with the carriers and an expectation that you stay within the bounds of the CTIA guidelines. Now, those guidelines, and they have, as the administrators of those guidelines, they have the ability and the right, honestly, to filter, block, or suspend any traffic coming through that channel. And that's how it's viewed, right? It's not, they don't view it as traffic coming from launch control. They view it as traffic through that very narrow channel of your established B2B relationship.
Right.
That's
the
what
company
gets monitored.
I registered with TCIA, right? So my EIN, my corporation. So I remember this all going down back in 2019. Right. And I think Trump signed it like January 2020 or whatever, right? I think it was a Stryker Act or something like that because everyone was getting frustrated. Around this time, everyone was getting frustrated with all the text blasting, right? And so as I saw this, and we're like, we're going to have to register our information with the carriers, like this is just a bad idea for me as a business owner because at this point, there was not clear distinction between TCPA and all these other things. Like, so I'm not going to volunteer my information to a carrier only to get slapped for TCPA.
Right.
Clearly, that was the wrong decision.
Right. And it's, I wish, honestly, that I'd taken more effort personally, or we'd taken more effort to get more in front of this earlier, because it is that blending of ideas of what is just carrier best practices and whether or not you're maintaining a business to business relationship and the TCPA, the blending of those two is what caused all of the concern. Right. And it's unnecessary concern. They are very separate things. And when you all of the hoops that people have had to jump through recently, this is another, you and I talked about this before we came on. And I said, like, I understand that when people, from a real estate investor's perspective, it's like, oh, they're coming after us. They're not. Like, real estate investment is the tiniest little fish in a very big pond. Right. So, not to say and I will be clear about this, not to say that there are no eyes on real estate investment, because there are.
Yeah.
But it's not a central focus. It is number 3,482 on the list of concerns from the telecom industry, right?
Yeah. And I think like my own personal anecdotal experience, as well as what I've read, articles about, it's like, it's these student loan companies, the car service warranties. I was kind of joking earlier, like I haven't had that Acura in like 10 years.
Right.
Like stop calling me about or stop texting me about the stupid Acura.
Yeah.
Right. Or the third one right now is all those ERC ones. I think ERC is probably like between the three: student loans, car service warranty, and ERC.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are the big ones. And think about how hard this is for the carriers, right? Like I heard this stat recently. I think it was 23 billion text messages are sent daily on an international level. 27 billion. All of those being filtered through a handful of companies, right? Like obviously outside the US, there are huge telecom providers as well, right? But it's not that many companies that are processing these billions of messages coming through. So it's not like there's someone behind a computer screen going, real estate investor, block them. Right? Like they're just filtering mechanisms that are in place to keep that kind of repetitive over texting from happening, right? Like that, the fact that you weren't able to opt out of that message and just stop getting it is the core of the problem, right? It's when someone says, I don't want to receive this text message, and then they get hit again and again and again and again, then there's a problem, right?
Yeah. I had my best friend, he moved from here to California, and he missed a tax payment on his personal residence. So now he's got like a late tax on it. And so he's on a stacked list, right? Because now he's an out-of-state landlord. He's paid his property off, so it's free and clear. So he's high equity.
Yeah.
And he's got a tax delinquent. It's like, how do I get off this list? Like, you're toast. You're getting texted for the rest of your life. Right? He's like, but I keep saying stop. It's like, yeah, you can say stop.
Yeah.
Forever. They're going to keep texting you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And an individual should honor that, right?
Yeah.
Like an individual real estate investor, that person opts out, honor that.
Right.
Take them off of your list. Do not text them again, right? Because the only thing that you're responsible for is your relationship to that recipient and your relationship with the carrier, right? So if you are respectful of the recipient and you DNC people when they request to be DNC'd, your campaign will be fine. And then the person in the campaign right next to you that's like, whatever, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm going to keep messaging them. They're going to get shut down.
Right.
And then they're going to say something like, well, text messaging is dead.
Yeah.
No, you were not smart about the way that you did it, and you got yourself into trouble.
Well, because they weren't ever going to respond with you.
No.
If you never respected them in the first place.
Right. And the list that friend of yours is on, it's not the individual investors list that's the problem. It's publicly shared data. It's where anybody can get this. There's no list to be taken off of, right? Unless he wants to go protest the county registrar's office or something. Like he's on a public list. Like that's the list. That's publicly accessible, right? Yeah. So as a individual texter, as an individual investor, respect every recipient and engage in a smart, sophisticated way. You won't have any problems. If you don't treat the recipient as an individual, and as we said at the top, an individual in a vulnerable situation, and you just hammer, and disrespect request to opt out, not going to go well.
Yeah.
Right.
So there was something that you and I, we had a conversation not too long ago. And it was really eye-opening to me. I was like, we have to have this conversation on the podcast. Like, we must have this specific conversation on the podcast. And it was basically what I was saying is like, in my experience, the carriers don't want us to text, right? And you're like, well, actually, that's not accurate. So can you share with me your perspective on the carriers, what the carriers want?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's two ways of looking at this. Okay, so if you look at the CTIA guidelines and you read through those, right, it should be 100% opt-in, right? But there are 23 billion text messages being sent every day. What percentage of that do you think are not opt-in, that fall into like a marketing bucket, right?
Yeah.
I don't
Billions.
know. I don't know the percentage, but it's in the billions.
Yeah.
Right. So, and each one of those billions of messages comes with a per message cost. So the carriers are making literally billions of dollars off of these outbound messages, right? And they need to find a center point between being able to scale up and grow themselves and to really enable people to send messages, but also respect the recipients and have a system where it's trending towards a much higher level of opt-in. It's trending towards more and more wanted messaging. And they need to find that balance, right, between profitability and user experience. And if you're in your campaign able to earn them some money without disrespecting the recipients, you're going to be fine, right? It's people that stray from that balance that they're looking for of profitability and user experience. If you break user experience, you're going to get slapped on the wrist or shut down, right?
So
it's a pretty simple bargain.
It's in the carrier's best interest financially for text messages to occur.
Yes.
It is not in the best interest for their shareholders if all their users are pissed.
Exactly. Right.
So what we're suggesting here, we're not stating this, we're just suggesting that the carriers are okay with some sort of gray area where there's a healthy balance between you're not pissing off their users and they're complaining all day, but we're still sending text messages.
Yes.
And we need to find how to stay in this healthy medium.
Yeah. And look, what we do that I think is really in advance of what anyone else is doing is from an engineering perspective, we put a ton of focus on the recipient experience. And so we do a lot, like things that sometimes real estate investors find as like gatekeeping, where you can send an initial message and then you can't send a follow-up for a certain amount of time, right? It's because if we don't do that, to be quite honest, people abuse the system and they send.
We are not a compliant group of people.
Right. And I want to start to change that because the truth is, we say this all the time. Anybody that's gone through onboarding with us will back me up on this, right? But like all of the money comes from the inbox, not from the messages that you're sending in the batches. It comes from the people that respond, right? Like I really hate this old adage of like, well, how many texts to a deal? What do you mean? Like if you're good, 10. If you're really bad at it, 5,000. Right? It's not a simple number equation. What it is a question of your ability to engage. Right? So the way that I look at it, and I just think this is true, but I would like your opinion on it.
Sure.
You know, our job as a piece of software, and I'm taking aside, I'm taking out all of the education stuff we do with the customer success team and the strategizing we do behind the scenes, but it's just breaking it down to nuts and bolts. Launch Control's job is to deliver messages, right, and get leads into your inbox. Once a lead hits your inbox, it's not about Launch Control anymore. It's sales processes. It's you having a system in place to take leads anywhere from a really hot lead to a lead that requires nurturing and have the systems and the cadences in place to close that deal, right? To get that to a discovery call, to get on site if your boots on the ground, but that it's on you, right? At that point.
I mean, I would argue, I don't know how much it is for them to get the message back to you, right? Because that should be fairly automated, right? But if you look like direct mail, if I send out 10,000 direct mail pieces, in a perfect world, 10,000 direct mail pieces land.
Yeah.
We have people that moved. They're no longer there, right? We have other unfortunate human situations where the delivery man just doesn't feel like delivering that day.
Yeah.
He'll just throw the whole thing in a bin. We know this because it's happened.
Yeah.
It's happened to us.
Right.
Right. And so in a perfect world, we send out 10,000 pieces, we get 10,000 pieces of mail delivered. In a perfect world, we get 10,000 calls from that. But the 10,000 calls coming back from us is really reliant on our message to get them to pick up the phone.
Yes.
Or I guess for direct mail, picking up the phone, calling us. In this context, replying to our message, right? But I wouldn't say the onus on you guys to deliver, because I think that's probably automatic if they're replying, right? The onus is on us to get as high response rate as possible.
Yeah, I mean, think of it this way, right? So you send out direct mail pieces, and you're going to get some calls back, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get some people coming back to you. But what you never see is you never see inside the person's home, the person who was like, ugh, and they threw this away. Or they're like, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
You never caught that moment of hesitation because you weren't privy to it.
Yeah.
Right? But when you send a text message, some people are going to respond, ugh, right? You're going to see that response because it's a text. People respond to text. That's why it works, right? You get a text, you read it. Sometimes you're going to respond, right? You're also going to get those hesitant responses, right? You don't have that insight with direct mail. You don't have that insight with PPC. You have to wait until they come to you. They're very passive forms of marketing. The leads are fantastic when they actually do come to you,
Right.
but there's no ability to nurture. They either come to you and you can close those leads, or they don't, right? But there's this nurture space with text that doesn't exist in any other marketing medium, where you can read between the lines and you can see this is a nurture, this is a direct phone call, this is a hot lead. This is you can determine in that moment you have another opportunity, and it's what you do with that secondary opportunity that could equal 5-10x your return, just simply by having a system in place to nurture in that space.
What are those as far as temperatures, right? Like this is a nurture, this is a pick up the phone right now. Like, what are some of the things you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it's not always going to be the most obvious things, right? It's not always going to be somebody saying, "Yeah, I'm looking at a couple of offers. When you want to talk?" Great when those come in.
Right. That's obvious.
Right. But it takes a little bit of practice, but there are only certain levels of responses that come in. So I'll give you an example, right? Like somebody, a house is worth maybe 120K as a wholesale deal, and the homeowner says, "Yeah, sure, I want $500,000," right?
Yeah.
So, do they really want $500,000, or like your friend who got on the list, have they just been hit up one too many times and they're like, "I want a fortune for it," right? But the backstory, like your friend, in a bit of a situation, right? And this may actually be the best way out. So how do you break through, right? It's not putting them on a drip automation that every 30 days says, "Hey, do you want a cash offer?"
Right.
That's not going to get it done, right? So you have to be able to look at that. And in most of those cases, I would pick up the phone and I would see if they answer, and then I would go through my sales cadence to see if I can kind of break through that wall and have a real, honest, and open conversation about what their alternatives are, and find out what their motivation is, and try to truly help them.
Yeah.
Right. I'd probably take that shot, but I would also, I'd look at it and try to gauge the temperature, right? Because some of those, it's gonna be like, yeah, let's pick that up and pick up the phone and call that person. Some you're gonna be like, you know what? I think they've been pushed a bit too far. Let's just let that go.
Yeah.
And I would honestly probably DNC it, because if you feel like someone's at a frustration point, it's not. If wholesaling would be so much easier if people could get isolated data, truly isolated data, and you knew that no one else had ever made this offer to that homeowner, and you were going to, blow their mind with something brand new.
Right.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
That would be amazing.
Right. But
It's not the world we're living in.
Right. So you have to keep the entire system in mind, especially in a market like this. Like it's so crowded. There's so many people doing it. Like the odds of you being first, like slim to none. Right?
We had a property we locked up, as a matter of fact, last week. So, we had texting, we turned it off, we reactivated it a couple months with you guys, a couple weeks onboarding, this and that. So we've been texting, I want to say, for about 3 or 4 weeks now.
Yeah.
And we had an appointment last week, and we went there. And you're talking about saturation, right? I'm like, she's got a cash offer for 210, got cash offer for 215. Fortunately, we were able to lock it up at 200,
Yeah.
right? But that was an SMS lead, and we just started doing this recently.
Yeah.
It didn't even take that long to get the first opportunity. But yeah, definitely feel saturated because like I got to go and win this contract because I know at 210 and 215 I can't move this property.
Right.
I know those are bad numbers, but there's someone out there promising them that. So we've talked about the 10 DLC, right?
Yeah.
What are some other best practices right now? Because that's the promise, right, for the show.
Yeah.
Best practices right now to ensure. Well, I guess that's the first thing, right? To make sure you're still texting is to make sure you get that 10 DLC done. Because I think effective August 31st, you can't text anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's with anybody. You haven't been able to text with launch for a long time without having that because we want to maintain the best possible relationship with the carriers that we can.
Right.
And it's just like this is not just a real estate investment thing. Like name a business. Doesn't matter. If you want to use SMS engagement in your business, this is the business to business relationship you need to sign up for. Like it's just required. There is no way around it.
That's the first step.
Right.
Moving forward, what are some additional best practices for SMS marketing?
Okay, so if we're talking about outbound marketing, right? So we're doing prospecting. We need people to get really out of this mentality of just treating data like data points and not like human beings, as we opened up having that conversation, right?
Yeah.
So any attempts to just use multiple platforms, for instance, like I know people are doing this because launch will put the brakes on a lot to limit, how many texts can go to a single recipient and how often you can re-engage. And we do all of this, again, for those compliance reasons of keeping people in that band of good best practices and in the happy place with the carriers, right? But there are people that will go and use 3 different platforms so that they can message the same person 3 different times. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. That harms everybody, right? Because I have the unique viewpoint, or we have the unique viewpoint of, launch control is basically the biggest network of real estate investors in the country, right? So I see what everyone's doing all around the country. And so I don't see it as an individual. I see it as like, guys, we're all in this together. Please don't do the bad things because it's going to make it a lot more difficult for everyone to use SMS engagement as a successful way forward. Right? So we all have to get more sophisticated. And we all have to stop with the non-recipient focused texting and really start trending towards more levels of sophistication to truly do what we've been preaching for years, which is take those leads in the inbox and challenge yourself to close as many as you possibly can, right? Like, as far as KPIs go, right? It should be measured not on how many texts you sent, but how many discovery calls you set. And it should be a challenge to your team of upping that number every month so you can up the ROI.
Right.
The average user on launch control right now gets something like a 10 or 15x return on launch control. But I think it's a shadow of what they could get with better practices, right? So we all need to trend towards that level of more sophistication. I also think, and I'd love to nerd out with this about you, I also think that we need to start really focusing on ways that investors are bringing in their own opt-in data. Right? They're gathering acknowledgement because I think if you think about most of the marketing forms that real estate investors are using that are where you're getting these motivated leads coming in, right? So you're getting direct mail lead coming in, a PPC lead coming in, and again, like we talked about this, you send 10,000 out, you've got nothing in that active zone in the middle where you could nurture, right? You just have to wait and hope that they come to you, right? And then they come to you, and it's a phone call. So you have that opportunity to close them, right? But how often do you close on a single call? You have no mechanism in place to re-engage, right? But the more we push people, even with these motivated leads, to acknowledge that SMS is a good way to contact them, or, again, I'm all for multi-channel marketing, right? Like anything that you can get so that you aren't limited to a single touch point. Right? You don't have to close in the moment. You can re-engage and retarget and get after them. That scales businesses.
So I think that's a fantastic point. Challenging ourselves. How can we get a higher, how can we get more out of the people that reply?
Yeah.
But I think even on top of that too is how do we get more people to reply to the initial text? But then how do we do more with those that did reply?
Yeah.
So we're using left main,
Mm-hmm.
and there are cadences instead of left main, right? And this and that. And so there are SMS automated in there. What would be the difference between automating an SMS campaign for someone that called in from direct mail inside of Salesforce versus doing it through launch control?
It's going to come down to really engagement strategies, because in any of those, like, comes in through direct mail, right? What was the end result of that conversation? Where did that conversation leave off?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's going to give you different stories that you want to tell. And so by setting up the automations and launch based off of the exit point of that conversation and how you want it to re-engage, then you can have a more sophisticated level of those retargeted kind of automations going on, right? And have the full feature functionality of launch. You're not going to have that level of sophistication with any other kind of automation system.
So I'm going to ask some more basic oriented questions.
Of course.
So there's some things that we can do to get the first message to respond, right? Like there were things we were doing for a while.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, Mike, hi, right? Or is this still Steve's cell? Whatever. What are you seeing generally for people that are doing that are sending out text, that are having the most effective conversations?
It actually usually starts with data and how you segment the data, right? So the wider the net that you're casting, the worse results that you're going to get typically.
Yeah.
Right. And that's been the problem from the beginning, right? Is we're like, oh, I'm going to text Phoenix. Hey, Steve, you own 57 Green Street, correct? Right. And it's everybody's been doing that forever. The people that get really narrowed down, like all the way down to a housing complex, that's obviously going to make it feel a lot more local. It's going to make it feel more known, right? We're actually in the process of working on some new messaging concepts that we're going to be rolling out to try some things. But, something that I think, and, again, love your feedback on this one. I think that REI has a bit of a positioning problem. Right. And we were talking about that level of vulnerability and kind of getting, people that are at that last resort, right? All of the marketing, in my opinion, is aimed at last resort hopes, right? So that's where I think this, like, Cash Kings, Ohio, we pay cash, pure cash, call us at 1-800-756-CASH, right? Like that is aimed at last resort. It's not aimed at that nurture phase. It's not aimed at the people that are thinking, what are my options here? Like, let me ask you this question, right? Because I still don't understand it. It's been a question me for 4 years.
All right.
And I genuinely think it comes down to positioning, right? I got into this business 4 years ago, and I was like, how does every homeowner in America not know about this? How is it when they go to sell their house, they're not like, I have multiple options. I can list it. I can go create a financing, dig into subject to. I can find a direct buyer. Let's see what they're offering. How does every homeowner not have this 3-funnel idea in mind?
Because they're so busy with their lives. It's like, you even talk about the stuff you see in the news, right? It's like, hey, like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Or like, I used to be the biggest Cardinals fan, right?
Yeah.
My friends, I'm in the text messaging group, right, with my friends. They're talking about the Cardinals. Like, I just completely tune out that conversation. Like, Cardinals situation has nothing to do with me, right? Like, once they re-sign Kyler Murray, okay, they're dead for the next 4 years. I already know that franchise is toast.
Yeah.
Anything about the Cardinals, I'm not even paying attention to. It's irrelevant, right? And I think that's kind of the same thing. Like, with homeowners, they're not paying attention to all these other options because it doesn't apply. But once it applies, now they're seeing everything. So we talk about this in our sales training. It's the reticular activating system. And basically what that comes down to is, like, if you're going to go buy a red Lexus, you haven't seen a red Lexus until you decide you're going to buy a red Lexus. Now you see red Lexus everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And for the next 2 weeks after you buy it, it's like, man, how does everyone own a red Lexus? And then after that period of time's passed, your reticular activating system's turned off. You don't even see all the other red Lexuses anymore. Right. Or at least you don't see as many. And so I think that there's a moment in time where because there's so much information out there, the brain just filters in what's relevant. They just don't see all these other options. But it's the reason why we talk about in our sales training, we absolutely cannot accept I need to think about it. Because if I'm in Michael's home and I'm good at 150, you're good at 150, you just need to sleep on it or pray on it just so that you feel good about it. Yeah. Right. And it's like, hey, Michael, you seem like a nice, genuine guy. Sure, no problem. Go ahead, sleep on it. I leave. It's not out of the question that you get 2 text messages that evening about someone buying out your house. We're in Phoenix. It's just not out of the question. And you're like, yeah, sure. Well, what's your offer? And then some idiot will make an offer by text message or whatever. And now you're going to tell them, well, I got this other guy who is at 150. And the guy says, oh, I can do 155. You and I had a great conversation. We built rapport. We built trust. We seem to like each other. We're doing business together. I come back tomorrow with my contract and you're like, oh, yeah, I actually got a higher offer.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about why are they not aware they have all these options? It's just not relevant yet. But the moment is relevant. They are aware of all of their options.
Right. I agree with that, but I also have a slight counter argument.
Sure.
Okay. So my counter argument is that all of the marketing that is done in REI for the most part panders to the lowest common denominator.
Yes.
It's last resort, right? So people look at that, even if they hear it and think, well, that's not me. That's not me. I'm not in last resort space. I'm good.
Even if they are, technically.
Even if they are.
Mentally, they're not.
They're not,
Yeah.
right? They're like, no. That's desperate. That's not me. I'm not desperate.
Right.
And there's no marketing in between that's offering just solutions for those that are considering. So if you think about like if you go on YouTube, right? Like your numbers are amazing, but there are 10,000 people talking about how to do wholesale real estate and how to make money doing it. Nobody is telling homeowner success stories. Nobody's out there talking about the solutions that they put in place for homeowners. Like every deal you close is a success story that you had with a homeowner. Nobody's sharing those. Nobody's marketing those. Nobody's positioning themselves. So I'll give you an analogy. I was traveling somewhere. I was in Nepal, and I got off the bus in Nepal, and I got mobbed by 300 people that were like, stay at my hotel, stay at my hotel, stay at my hotel. And there was one guy that was 30 yards back holding up a sign with just the price on the hotel. And I was like, I'm staying with that guy. And I walked through the crowd and I stayed with that guy. So when they get to that decision point that you mentioned, right, are you going to go with the person that's always been there and was a known solution, even if you weren't ready to go down that path? Or are you going to go with one of the 300 that are mobbing you?
So I think you look at the marketing component, right? How much does it cost to market to someone who is not last resort? Because the margins are incredible, right?
Yeah.
This is life-changing for most people. You do one wholesale deal a month. For most people, that's life-changing. You're making more money than you can get, for the most part, at a W-2.
Yeah.
It's life-changing. So the margins are ridiculous, right? So then how much can you afford to spend to market to get these situations? The other thing, too, you can't get those same margins earlier in the cycle. It's when they're desperate, when they need help, where the margin's the highest. And so I'm going to share a story here that I've never shared in public because it's grossly inappropriate. But I think this makes sense here.
I thought it was my job to say grossly inappropriate things.
So I have a friend, and she was disgusted with the messages she was getting.
Yeah.
This was way before Tinder was around. It was some other dating platform. And she's just disgusted by this.
Yeah.
Like, why would these guys send these inappropriate messages?
Yeah.
I was like, well, it's a numbers game. She's like, what does it mean? Like, you're going to say no. And most self-respecting women will say no and be offended. But there's that one girl that will say yes. And he gets what he wants. And that's it. So all he's doing is marketing like an REI guy.
Yeah.
I don't need to put my best foot forward. I just need to be who I unfortunately am in that context. And there will be a girl that says yes.
Right.
And I think that is the lens most people are marketing.
Yeah, I get it. I agree. I just think that the lens could be a lot wider and could
But what's the
start
cost,
sooner.
right, to do that?
Great question, right? So how do we do that at a level that doesn't have a huge price tag on it? And I'm not going to offer a solution right now.
Yeah.
Like I didn't come here to offer that solution, right? But what I will say is this: like part of the reason why I'm here, and part of the reason why I want to partner up with people like yourselves, we just closed a deal where we're going to provide data through Deal Machine, and I love the way that they've educated their clients all the way along. They're really great about education, and so I want to team up, or we want to team up with the thought leaders, because I genuinely believe that the way forward, not just for SMS, but the way that all of us are going to scale in real estate investment, is by widening that circle. Right? Because the desperation circle is always going to be here. But if we can get into the nurture circle and the options circle, and we can do that in a way that's cost effective, then we can increase the inbound leads coming in.
Right.
Where people are like, look, I don't think this is for me, but I'm curious. How does this work?
Yeah.
Because then it goes back to, it's a question of timing, right? Because if they're asking that question, to be honest, and I don't mean to be harsh about it, it's a downward slope, right? Like they maybe they'll come into a windfall and they'll be able to reinvest in the house.
It's the same thing. We're like, hey, I got a loan mod approved. Okay, great. I'm gonna follow up in 2 months.
Yeah.
Because as the reality is, if you needed a loan mod, even if it got approved, 2 months, you're gonna be in the same exact situation.
Sure. So it's an early indicator, right? And if we can get these, or leading indicator, if we can get into that kind of marketing that gives us not only leading indicators, but inbound data coming in, then we solved everything, because we have opt-in data and we have data that nobody else is going after because it hasn't hit the desperation circle yet. Right. And there's a way that we can manufacture that, I think, that equals that, and then reroute that through SMS engagement that's going to equal this whole circle, or circles of available audiences that no one else is touching.
So we're going to talk about this theoretical component.
Yeah.
How we're going to find everyone else earlier on, because I think everyone would love to do it, right? Like, so I've been doing this for some time, right? Back in 2009, I could buy pre-foreclosure data prior to being public record, right? So in Arizona, you had to be late for 3 months, and after you're late for 3 months, now it's 3 months in foreclosure, right? But the public notice, now everyone is on you, right? I was able to buy data where you weren't public record yet.
Yeah.
That's now illegal. I can't buy that data anymore.
Yeah.
I've tried. So to your point about hitting these people earlier, I'm all about hitting people earlier. Question is what data are you hitting that you're getting to them earlier? Okay.
Well, I think that we need to make a clear separation, right, between what is data, because that's going to be outbound always, right? They didn't come to you. They didn't raise your hand, their hand, excuse me. And what is inbound? And I understand that inbound is in the beginning going to be a fraction of, but it creates another opportunity, right? And that opportunity could have a high return. And it also just sets up processes that are there for scalability. Now, there are lots of ways that you can do this. Like we had somebody that we worked with that was on TikTok, and he went around recording videos in the forest, just selfies, talking about wholesaling, and he got 600,000 plus followers. And from those followers, all of they got pushed to a website. Not a very good one, but he collected 30,000 plus opt-in leads off of that system. Yeah, free, walking around the forest, recording TikTok videos, right? Like he put nothing into that marketing cost, nothing. Right. I think like his neighbor's kid designed the website, like nothing. 30,000 plus people said, sure, send me more information, right? So there are ways that we can get people to come to us, but it comes down to what I think it comes down to, and this is my personal opinion, okay? What I think, because there's that desperation circle that we talked about, right? Surrounding that desperation circle is mistrust. So trust is a huge barrier to get over in REI, right?
It is.
Because like the analogy that I gave, 300 people are rushing at you. You're not going to look around and be like, you look trustworthy, right? There's just going to be a general sense of distrust.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of people that think we're scammers.
Right. So how do you get in front of that, right? How do you be the person I said was holding the sign in the back, right? So
I mean, the way we found that we got a contract 2-3 weeks ago. They found us through SEO, right?
Yeah.
They went on Googled people to buy houses. We like this company. We went out there and we had no competition. Well, we didn't have no competition. We had a home investor guy we were competing against, but they're like, yeah, we hated that guy.
Yeah.
And again, we bought it cheaper than the home investor offer. But
Exactly. And organic SEO is free. Costs nothing.
So I think that's one component. But for the most part, hitting people earlier, I don't know how to hit them earlier.
Well, what I'm saying,
or hitting people with different precursors.
Yeah, I mean that we're going to try that through messaging, and I encourage people to try that through messaging to not take the we buy houses for cash approach. It is on the reason why I'm sure some people listening or watching have had trouble getting their website registered with the TCR because they have the we buy houses for cash stuff splattered all over it. It's because the carriers have marked that as being potentially fraudulent or potentially distrustful.
Yeah, it's interesting because for us, when we went through that process with you guys, it was really easy.
Yeah, it is not a streamlined system. It's still new for them.
It's manual, but
it's manual.
It was fairly seamless. So actually, I was going to go through the feedback here. So before we go there were a couple of questions from Facebook that I posted. Hey guys, got launch control here. Everyone's freaking out.
Yeah,
we got these guys on. Let's talk about it. But before we do that, we are working together. We're collaborating because you want to change how the marketing is done. I want to change how the sales is done. So I think this is perfect.
Yeah.
So if you guys are interested in working with Michael and launch control, go to textdisruptors.com, TEXT disruptors.com. So questions from Facebook, and unfortunately there were only 2. We will get to both of them. I guess there's multiple questions in one of these. How's the deliverability to all major carriers? So how is deliverability at this moment with all the major carriers for launch control?
With us, it's pretty uniform across all of them.
So do you have a number? I have a number, but do you have a number?
Yeah, it's going to be for the most part in the upper 80s. Some will go into the lower 90s, but there are a lot of things that affect that, including saturation within a market, how many people are sending texts. So it can vary.
Sure.
What people should understand is if it's anywhere in like the 85 plus range, everything's all good, right? If it drops down to say 60%, it's not launch control. It's not the software. It's the fuel you put in the tank. So stop, and we'll take a look at your data. We'll take a look at your messaging, and we'll see what clogged up the drain. But it's not the software doesn't vary more than a couple of percentage points. Any big drop, it's what you put in the tank.
Yeah, and you guys have been incredibly helpful coaching our team on that. What keywords are a no-go? I know like it was a big deal in like 2019. It's like, don't say blue or out of the blue. That's going to kill you.
Yeah. Don't worry about the keywords. We are constantly or consistently analyzing and updating those, and we won't allow the messages to go out. You'll know because you won't be able to save a template in the system if it's one of those words that are very clearly being filtered by the carriers. Don't cheat. We have a growing list of words where somebody wanted to say offer and they put a 0 instead of an O, and then I have to roll my eyes and like block that. Just don't. If it's getting filtered again, Launch is the biggest network of real estate investors in the country. If you are doing these little things that you think are quick little workarounds for you, it's harming the entire ecosystem for everybody.
Yeah.
Don't do that. If everybody wants to maintain high deliverability levels, play nice so that we
all want to win.
So we can all win.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So off the top of your head, offer sounds like it's a no-go.
But it's already blocked. Like you don't have, that's what I'm saying. Don't concern yourselves with keywords. We'll take care of that.
Right.
Like we'll let you know.
But if someone wasn't using a launch, what are the...
Oh, yeah. Well, look, it goes back to the marketing, right? Like we buy houses for cash. That is on carriers' radar. Like solutions for homeowners, alternatives for homeowners is not, right? So if you're saying cash, offer, deal, out of the blue, like, you know why out of the blue is on there? Sounds random, right? It's because one person probably had a text message template that said, Hey, Steve, I'm sure this is out of the blue, but just wondering if you owned 302 Maple Drive, I can give you a cash offer for it, right? And then they sent that same message. And then that investor said to their investor friend, hey, got this great template. Starts with, I know this is out of the blue. It's a winner. And then 10,000 people did it. And the carriers were like, why are hundreds of thousands of homeowners getting messages that say out of the blue?
Yeah.
It's because somebody thought they had a magic text and they sent it to everybody. And
Well, I think it's
that
because it
happened.
started from cold call text.
Yeah.
Or cold call script. What are the volume limits
The volume limits on
texting?
it's, I mean, we can go all the way up to an enterprise account, which will allow for, well, at the highest level, 10,000 message segments a day.
Yeah.
But I want people to think not, and look, don't get me wrong, like we make more money as a company when people go up to higher levels. But I don't want people going to higher levels just to go to higher levels, just to send more messages. What I want is people to make as much money as possible out of the data that they put into the system, right? So before anybody scales up in terms of how many messages they want to send, I want to have a conversation or have my team to have a conversation about strategy, right? Because if you can close on a pro account as many or more deals that you could close on an enterprise account, I don't want you burning data.
Yeah.
Data's expensive. Skip tracing, it's expensive. Don't do that.
Right.
I want you to have the systems in place to like I said earlier, right? Like if, let's say you send 1,000 messages and you get 200 responses, how many from those 200 responses are you going to filter out as do not calls?
Yeah.
Now you've got, say, I don't know, 80 workable leads in the system. How many of those 80 leads, challenge yourselves, how many of those 80 leads did you turn into multi-touchpoint conversations? How many of those multi-touchpoint conversations had a discovery call? If it's at the level of discovery call, what's your business close rate? Like how many did you guys close, right? Can you up that number? And think of it from real inbox KPIs of conversion, right? And if you're looking at conversion rates and you've like, I can't do any better with our conversion rates. We're closing 60% of discovery calls. It's bonkers. We're making tons of money. Up your volume. Right? But don't up your volume without systems in place.
Yeah, makes total sense. So real quick, I actually asked my team to give me some feedback prior to you guys coming onto the show. So there's a few different things. This is from Ira. She runs our operation. So things she likes, fast support. The launch control team provides clear, detailed onboarding, shares best practices. The 10 DLC registration is made easy since support can provide a specific issue the company can prove to be approved. No need to worry about phone numbers for texting since it's built in. That's pretty cool. Provides dashboard that tracks deliverability and conversion rates. Can add multiple initial templates that flag all unwanted keywords before saving. Got provide spinners, so there's different ways of saying the same things. Options to store multiple drips, quick templates, and follow-up templates that can be assigned to each of the prospects depending on the status. They'll follow through the lead, which is great. Can use up to 3 phone numbers per prospect. You guys filter out litigators and landlines. That's huge. Saves us money on the landlines. And definitely sleep better without the litigators. And the second and third numbers are automatically targeted the following day, which again makes our lives easier because before we just focus on the first number. So I had them pull the numbers, and we were at 89% deliverability rate, which is significantly higher than prior to working with you guys. Right? Back then, when we set out to hell with this thing, I think we were at like 65% deliverability rate, and it felt like every month we were playing whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
We had to change this. We had to change that. So 89%, and it's easier. That makes me happy as a business owner.
Yeah.
And 11% response rate. So we're getting people replying. They're interested.
Yeah.
Every single day. So I think that's absolutely huge.
Yeah, and the response rate it varies depending on the market. If you're in a little market that's not oversaturated, it's probably going to be quite a bit higher, 16, 17%, right? It's never going to be, for outbound, it's never going to be higher than maybe 20%, right? Because it's just the nature of outbound. Inbound marketing, it's double that, easy, right? Because it's wanted, anticipated messages, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, like in 2018, right, it was like almost 100%. It was ridiculous, right?
yeah.
But 11%, I'm good with that because compared to cold calling,
Yeah.
right, we're getting people, we were able to have conversations with way more people in a lot less time.
Yeah.
Right? 11% is pretty good on a daily basis. I think we're sending about 3,700 messages a day,
Okay.
something like that. Right? So to get 300 people to reply, for me,
Yeah.
is a win, because we couldn't have 370 conversations
No.
cold calling a day.
No.
Not with one VA at least.
Yeah.
So if you guys are interested again in getting similar results, text disruptors.com, TEXT disruptors.com.
Yeah, and a couple of things I wanted to mention about that. There are certain things that you mentioned in there, like the filtering out of negative keywords or spam-related keywords, creating message variations within the system. All of that is on the engineering side, and that's really the platform, and that equals us giving you as much of a one-on-one connection as possible. So something like, for instance, the text spinners. What that equals is a different message, even if it's a slight variation, being delivered to every single homeowner, right? So it gives you the ability to, from a marketing sense, to A/B test things and figure out what's working, what's not. But from an engineering perspective, what it's doing is making sure that what's going through the system is as close to natural messaging as possible, right? Because we are not doing auto dialing. It is not a robo texting kind of thing. And we don't want anything that even gives the illusion of that. Because all that we're really doing is giving you the ability to simultaneously maintain 20 active texting conversations so that you can filter as many of those up to that discovery call level as possible, right?
Right.
On the REI side, what I would really encourage people to do is to work very closely with our customer success team, because they're not just app experts. They're so deep into real estate investment at this point that I almost feel bad for them, right? Where they're just like, this is every day they're in it. Like they're sending me suggestions like, hey, we're seeing an opportunity in the upper Michigan Peninsula. And I'm like, what? Okay. Because they're just really in it with the network. So definitely to work with them. But the best approach that I've seen coming in to work with SMS engagement is, and look, it's something I really deeply believe with real estate investment, is that everybody's always on a learning curve. Doesn't matter where you are in your business, you're always learning, right? Network, connect yourself with coaches, get that really good REI kind of background and systems. Really think about, even before you get to us, how to apply some of those things that you've learned to that early stage engagement. Work with our team on SMS specific engagement, and you will do extremely well, right? And obviously data matters, right? Like we're going to set people up through the Deal Machine partnership that we have. We're going to give people Deal Machine data straight out of the way. They'll get a free 30 days with them coming in, so they can utilize that. But they don't, but in general, data is really important, right? Like the best data that you can afford to put in, do that. And per our conversation, just try, if you have 0% inbound now, aim for 5%, aim for 7%. Try to get those inbound up, because those leads that you retarget with SMS, the ROI on those is outrageous. It's so high.
Speak on that. I mean, what are some examples?
Well, people that are, say, like I gave the example of like using direct mail to retarget. And so they know who you are. You're picking up a conversation that you've already had.
Yeah.
You're capitalizing on the timing aspect, right? You're not sending that retargeting text 2 weeks later. Makes no sense, right? You're picking the right time. You're sending it. And when people have done that, like the response rate is, 40+%, and people are re-engaging and they're able to close those deals. They are motivated leads, right? Like your percent, it just takes what you were able to close from those motivated leads, adds to that, right? So this goes into what I was saying about like not having a versus mentality. So instead of like, how many deals did I close with direct mail versus how many deals did I close with SMS, how many deals did you close by joining those two together and using SMS to retarget direct mail, using direct mail to retarget anybody that was a non-responder in SMS, and you put all that data together and go, wow, between the two and using the two to play off of each other and get the best results out of both, I ended up with an extra 4 deals An extra 4 deals is an extra $80,000, maybe $100,000. That's life-changing.
Oh, yeah. So, it's real money.
Yeah.
So another question that came from Facebook was, what are all the differences between real estate investors texting and, election season is right around the corner? Because those text messages during a presidential campaign, it's nonstop.
Yeah. There really isn't that much of a difference, honestly. Like everybody has that B2B arrangement with the carriers. It's just a question of filtering, really.
I think the political campaigns are exempt from whatever laws there are.
They're not 100% exempt. There is a different filing, like the way that they register. It's a different channel that they register for, so that they're separately marked. So they do still undergo some filtering. They do get things shut down, but it's less filtering for political. It's less filtering for NGOs or any kind of fundraising.
Yeah.
They have a separate registration process for those.
Yeah, because during the last presidential election, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, these guys are exempt from certain rules.
Well, it's also like it's a question of opt-in too, and like what's around it, right? Like I don't know this, so this is not stated fact, but if you're registered as a Republican or registered as a Democrat or registered as an independent, it's as close to public record as possible, right? So people are going to be able to get those lists, and there's even in some cases like an assumed opt-in, right? Well, you're a Democrat, you want Democratic text, right? Like, but again, like if you should be able to opt out of those, and
there's so much money going in, you can't opt out of all of them.
But this goes to our conversation, right? Like there's that balance between this perfect world of 100% opt-in for everyone, and it's all wanted conversations, and the growth of profitability for the whole telecom industry, and being able to stay within the balance of those two, right? Stay within the bounds. You don't, disrespect the recipient or the collective recipients in your data set, and you'll be fine.
Right. So best practices. Follow the TCIA guidance.
Yeah.
Get your 10 DLC figured out correctly. Treat text marketing like you would any other marketing, not as just this kind of text blasting tool. Try to have as many conversations as possible.
Yeah.
So just like you would be intentional with your direct mail piece or your TV ad or your PPC landing page, be intentional with your text message.
Yes.
So that people will reply to it, and then focus as much as you can on the people that replied, not texting these people that have not replied forever.
Exactly. Because all of the money is in the inbox, right? So, and they're all teachable things, right? Like, I'll use cold calling as an example. It gets predictable, right? Like how people are going to respond. And so you have decision trees, right? If the person says this, reply with this. If the person says this, reply with this. Why aren't more people applying that to text? It's you
haven't had to.
But you should, right? You should.
Because moving forward, you have to. The standard is getting raised.
Yeah, the standard's getting raised, but what is also hidden in that, or not so hidden in that, hidden in plain sight, is that hundreds of thousands of dollars are in that, right? Like by doing that, it's not because you have to, it's because there are tons of leads that are getting left behind or deals that are getting left behind because somebody didn't take the one extra step, right? The one extra message, the one effort to pick up the phone, the taking the time to, instead of having like a VA hit quotas, to actually have a decision tree mapped out that if the homeowner says this, notify the sales agent immediately and let them call. If they say this, reply with this quick reply. If they say this, put them on a drip campaign, but set the first delivery date for 90 days out because we don't want to pester this person.
Yeah.
Like have that decision tree. It's a teachable decision tree. By having a teachable decision tree, if you can take your results with launch control from being 10x to 20x, 25x, like what's the dollar value on that for your business? So it's not that you have to, it's an opportunity to actually make really profitable improvements to your marketing structure.
Everything you're saying makes total sense. I think the default is just spend more money on marketing.
Yeah. And well, this is what I'm saying, where I think that like we can work together.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean you and I. I do want that to happen, but I mean in a sense of like the real leaders in the industry and the people that do understand sales and marketing. You know, you and I had a conversation earlier today where I said I feel like a lot of people get up to that stage in their business where they're making 7 figures and they think it's, you know, time to go on vacation to Costa Rica, and they realize that they have to learn sales and marketing because their business is that big, right? So let's work together to start that at the early stage when somebody still has a day job, and they've got these little bits of marketing that are cheap but effective and scalable, so that when they do get up to that stage, they can just bail to Costa Rica and have a good time because they've got really sophisticated sales and marketing cadences set up that are producing, taking their business from 10x to 25x on these combined, you know, multi-channel marketing efforts. And everybody is making can I say a hell of a lot more money?
Absolutely.
Everybody's making a hell of a lot more money, you know?
Solve a lot more problems.
Exactly. And yes, thank you. And also, it means that a bigger pool of homeowners that we're able to help, some of those that haven't hit the desperation circle yet, that are in those outer circles, by widening that pool, again, think about the recipients. Like, how many people did we help out of really bad situations before they got to the point where they just really felt like they had no other option, right? Like, if we can start helping more and more people, the knock-on effect of us helping more and more people is that the reputation of the industry goes up. Right. And if the reputation of the industry goes up, then more business starts coming to us, right? Like that manufacturing inbound leads gets easier. Yeah. Because somebody talked to somebody that they you know, had a problem get solved for them before the last resort point. They're like, this is actually a good idea. You should consider it, right? So again, we've raised the profile of the industry. The inbound leads come to us. We close those inbound leads. It's not that hard to project the millions that come out of that. You know?
Right. No, it makes total sense. I want to think about something you want to leave the listeners with. A final message, everybody. We'll make it just a couple of quick announcements. Guys, you know, again, we've got our sales community. We've got over 100 people in there now, and the role-playing sessions, the call reviews, we're having multiple live training calls every single week. If you guys want to close more sales, the fastest way to do it is to get really good at sales. So we invite you to join us in our community at salesdisruptors.com. Make sure you tune in next week. We got Sean Terry. You know, I consider him the godfather. He spawned all these little wholesalers, including myself. Yeah. So I got Sean Terry coming on next week. And again, if you guys got value, please subscribe. A rising tide lifts all boats. So what final message would you like to leave everyone with?
Last message would just be, you know, come to Launch Control. We'll get you set up with some really great engagement processes. We don't just send messages. We're really focused on improving real estate investment businesses. So come work with us. We'll give you the tools to succeed with SMS engagement. And if you need them, we'll help connect the people to people like you that can really help them, you know, learn those sales processes and expand the marketing opportunities that fall outside of our subject matter expertise, and just use our giant network really to you know, connect people and create those success paths that they need to scale up.
Yeah, perfect. And someone wants to get a hold of you, best way?
Best way, you can, if you want to get in touch with me directly, you can email me, michael@launchcontrol.us.
There you go, michael@launchcontrol.us is really easy. If you guys want to check out Launch Control, textdisruptors.com, and we'll see you guys in there.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Shout out to Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. We real estate disruptors.